Network. And today's topic is generating the future. And what we're talking about today is looking at how we can generate a future that isn't mired in the past, that isn't just a perpetuation of the past, and that isn't constrained by the limitations of the past. So, should be a fun conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating and electrifying, energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to be here with you this morning. And we're talking today about generating the future. And the idea here is to look at what it would take to generate a future that is not just a revisiting of the past. And that actually engenders some challenges for us because our framework is based on our experience. And all of that is already past. So, how do we generate something new, something that is not necessarily a linear continuation of the past? And I think that it's so important for us to be able to recognize what kinds of structures exist for us in order for us to start looking at something new. And what that requires is for us to be questioning and challenging assumptions that we've been living by that have been invisible. So this is really a tough call here, a tough challenge. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us this morning. We're talking about generating the future and looking to what it takes to actually create something new that isn't a continuation of the past. Because really, what we tend to do is we take the past and we project it, put it in front of us, and we live into that like that's our only option. And it's by doing that, actually, that we gain this sense of continuity, right? To say, oh, okay, well, the past is predictive of the future, but the past is predictive of the future when we put it in front of us to live into. So, what would it be to create a future that isn't dictated by the past and the failures of the past particularly. So this is a conversation that I've been engaged with. I'm collaborating with AI to have this conversation about what what do we need to be able to do to step into a future that is not a perpetuation of our same issues. And in order to be looking at our issues, it's is its own challenge because we take for granted so many things. And just as an example of what we take for granted, um, I one of the things that is foundational that we take for granted is this notion of separation that has propagated itself throughout our systems, throughout our language, and with that is an inherent violence. And it's so interesting, you know, we will I've said that to people and they sort of recoiled like, what are you talking about? And then we can just start looking at our language, like our motivational things. I'm gonna crush it. You nailed it. Let's kill it. Let's dominate that. Um let's destroy that. You know, I'm gonna crush it. These are just basic things that that we don't even hear in our language. You know, let's take another stab at it. It's like, wow. You know, we say these things all the time, and there's just an aggression and a violence that is part of our everyday language. Like, we're gonna discipline ourselves. I'm gonna force myself to do stuff that's good for me. And until we recognize this foundational aggression and hostility and like the pitting of ourselves against the world or the other, you know, it's based in this whole idea of separation, and that from that separation flows all these other experiences of scarcity, experiences of competition, of externalizing our value, and then needing to accumulate, the greed around because there's scarcity, because if you have more, it means I have less. And when we look at all these ideas, it's like when we bring them to conscious awareness, we don't necessarily agree with them. And yet it's an undercurrent for pretty much everything in our culture. Look at the way that business is set up. And we have a whole different set of morality, or it's a whole different set of principles for business. Like, it's okay to do things in business that personally would be just so incredibly unethical that we would never entertain them. And other assumptions like uh, with corporate domination, I'm going to say, and how corporations somehow have the right to make money at the expense of communities and the environment and the general health of the public. And these are things that we don't generally question. You know, like, if we think, it occurred to me, like with the pipeline, you know, we're talking about, well, you'd want the pipeline because we want to have energy independence. But the thing is, how are we benefiting from that? That energy, that fuel is getting exported to other countries. Are we seeing the benefit of those exports? No, the big companies are. And yet what's happening is our communities are getting decimated and our environment is getting destroyed as these pipelines go through and break or leak, or it's kind of crazy, right? We have all these assumptions. And so it seems to me that it's really important for us on a deeply personal level to be looking at what our assumptions are and what our collective stories are and what our personal stories are in order to generate a truly new future that calls us into the expression of our greater potential. And for ourselves individually, we can be looking at the stories that we have about who we are and about what's possible for us. We kind of figure, okay, I'm just going to keep going along in this direction, and this is the logical outcome. I'm going to work my job until I'm however old, and then I'm going to retire and whatever. Like, I think that one of the blessings of COVID is that it brought us to question the status quo to a certain degree. It brought us to question the way that work was done, and it threw us into out of a pattern enough to be able to sit back and say, whoa, Nellie, what's going on here? Maybe there are other choices to make that I wasn't aware of. And here's the deal with the world as it is, we need to create a new future. We need to create a future that's not founded in the way things have worked to this point, because it's really clear that those things aren't working anymore. And if we keep going in that direction, we're going to be in deep trouble. However, if we cultivate quote unquote solutions coming from the same place that created the problem, what we're going to do is just create different problems. And this is why, in my inquiry, I've gone as deeply as I know how. So far, I'm still working on it. But it looks to me like the foundation that has to shift for all of us is oneness, to move into recognition that we really truly are all connected, and that it's not a story of scarcity and competition. If I abuse you, it comes back to me. If I abuse the earth, it's cutting off my lifeblood, right? And we're actually seeing tipping points arising now. And it's this state of emergent emergency that holds the seed to activate us, to bring us alive to new potentials, to actually looking at the systems that are not functioning anymore, that that have an expiration date that is affecting everybody. And so why I think it's so important to look at this, making a transition from this notion of separation and the threat of the other, why it's so important is that the difference between separation that leads to conflict, aggression, greed, violence, hierarchies, domination, control, to something, to a place of interconnectedness and collective awareness and collaboration and community, is that we will make different choices coming from those places of connection and compassion than we will if we're separate from everything else, and our own value even is externalized. And it's interesting because this whole notion of separation is something that we even take to ourselves, where we deny parts of ourselves that we disapprove of somehow, where we deny our emotions, for example, or we're hostile to our own body and try to dominate it, like we objectify it and treat it like it's a thing instead of that it we are inseparable from it, that it is an expression of who we are, like that we can't really separate our bodies from ourselves. Makes it hard to talk about because we talk about it as something separate, but it isn't. It isn't. It's the way that we experience the world. And so we are fractured. We're fractured in so many ways. And so in looking to create our future, it doesn't have to be a linear progression from what's been so. We can make a choice at any moment to change our lives. You know, we can, maybe we had a trajectory of being in this job until we're 65 or however old, and gonna do the retirement thing, and then one day we say, you know what, no more, I'm gonna go do something that fills my soul, that gives me a sense of purpose. I call them left turns. I've made a lot of left turns in my life. And for me anyway, and I invite you to look at what's so for you, but those left turns were often driven by despair, actually, where I just couldn't take it anymore. And I think that that's kind of what happens in our culture too, that we get to a point where we just can't take it anymore. And that's when change happens. But I'm wondering what might happen if we could initiate change, not to get away from and to escape something that we don't like, but to actually move towards something that calls us, not just to react against something, but to be moving towards something, embracing something that speaks to us and that calls to our soul. And it's a scary thing to do. I recognize that. It's a scary thing to start actually dreaming a new future into being. It's scary because it's unknown, and typically what is so is that if it's if it's really a new future, it defies the common conversation. It defies consensus reality in a way. And I'll speak of an example just so that maybe you can, maybe it will support you in thinking outside the box. I was looking at, well, what if I could make it up any way I wanted to? How would I like my career to be? And I looked at what my practice was with my clients, and I thought, after going a year straight, I got to the end of the year and I barely made it past the end of the year. I was exhausted. I was just beyond burnt. Again, here's the desperation, right? That instigates change. But I I said I got to take a month off. I just have to take a month off. And it took me almost the entire month to get back to where I could function well. I was so exhausted. And then I just decided, well, if I could make it up any way I wanted, I would like to have work 3 months, take a month, work 3 months, take a month. And when I thought about that, it was like, that's nuts. That's crazy. How am I going to do that? How's it going to work for my clients? I won't, and how am I going to make up for the income? And had all these questions, and I did it anyway. And I have to say, it's one of the best things I ever did. It's been great for my income. It's been great for my well-being. It's been great for my clients because they got some integration time. But it was a totally unheard of kind of idea. And it required me internally to go against my conditioning about what's possible. And to think outside the box. Like if you could make it up any way you want. But when we make those choices, when we entertain those possibilities, when we allow ourselves to actually step outside the box in our thinking, like to recognize, oh, that's the box. But what would I really like if I didn't have to be complying with the convention? What would I do? What would I enjoy? I have another client who is an attorney and who just really wants to be a speaker and to have a podcast, to be on stages, to maybe do some consulting, and taking ownership of that vision is transforming their experience and opening up possibilities to them that they previously weren't willing to entertain. Again, for them, it just got to be so painful. It just got to be so painful that they had to find, or that they were inspired to find another way. So I guess generating a new future, we get to look at what's not working. And it may be that there just has to be enough pain to say it's not working, because so many of us are just day after day, it's okay, it's manageable, I can deal with it. Is it my dream life? No, but it's okay. It's not so bad that I need to make a change, because change is scary. So what we need to do is to make friends with the unknown in order to create a truly generative future, a new future that has new foundations, foundations of wholeness, foundations of the alignment with ourselves and our values, and being willing to create something new into the unknown. It's scary. I get it. It's scary, but that scariness is also exhilarating. I mean, it's a fine line between anxiety and exhilaration or excitement. It's a fine line. And if we can allow ourselves to become more comfortable with the unknown, and our ability to respond, to move out of being fixed into being able to flow, then we can open ourselves to possibilities that we had never even imagined, and opportunities that just emerge that never ever would have emerged from the old paradigm. So that's the invitation as we're going into this new year, is to step outside the box. And sometimes that requires first that we see the box. So that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And as always, it's a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity for these morning musings together. So until next time, so much love to you.